Welcome back everyone. Today we will be looking at Phantom Liberty as well as a brief overview of the spy genre. Phantom Liberty throws you into a chaotic and dark story full of danger and mystery. Dogtown is a crime-run city walled off from the rest of the world, governed by the defected rogue Colonel Kurt Hansen, who has used his military forces to lock down and heavily defend Dogtown, which is south of Night City, running his own crime empire, and he's armed to the teeth, a place where even Night City police are afraid to venture into. The style of missions you conduct in Phantom Liberty are much more informal than, say, something like the Star Wars The Old Republic MMORPG's Operative campaign, since you're operating on the fly in Dogtown as opposed to being an agent belonging to a huge organization and reporting to an HQ and a handler. The updates to combat in 2.0 and Phantom Liberty make the game feel quicker and more agile. It's starting to feel a bit more like Ghost Runner with ranged finishers and leaping air dashes and all that fun stuff. And the music, man, I gotta talk about the music for a bit because it is seriously so good. Very different from the traditional old school jazzy spy music sound from the 60s, of course. You know, something that sounds like, hit it, Jack. There's no bongos or trumpets in Phantom Liberty's soundtrack, but that's okay because it's not that sort of spy vibe in this expansion. Forgive me, I'm gonna probably butcher these names, but the Phantom Liberty theme song by Dawid Podziadlo and Pete Adamczyk is much more reminiscent of the newer Daniel Craig James Bond theme songs, like the ones done by Adele, Sam Smith, and Billie Eilish. But what really stood out to me were the songs The Man in Charge and You Can't Hide From Us. Both capture that haunting, eerie, Apocalypse Now, Escape from New York vibes from the Phantom Liberty soundtrack. They heavily reminded me of that. The Apocalypse Now song, I believe, was created by Carmine Coppola from the scene when they're at the Dolung Bridge. The Phantom Liberty songs I just mentioned also have a similar sound to the song Descent into New York by Alan Howarth from the Escape from New York soundtrack. They all capture that same cerebral, eerie, almost a horror movie vibe. That one's similar to The Thing main theme song as well. Probably because it's done by the same guy. My personal favorite song on the whole soundtrack though is called I'm a Netrunner. And it's not just because my V is an actual Netrunner, but because it's just such a chilling and hauntingly cool song. I love that one. You gotta check it out. Let's talk about the direct and possibly indirect inspirations that may have influenced the creation of Phantom Liberty. Phantom Liberty definitely nails the spy-fi thriller genre, but where did it get its incredibly captivating inspiration from? According to the Cyberpunk fandom wiki page, the inspirations for the expansion reads as follows. The events of Phantom Liberty are heavily inspired by the Escape from New York movie by director and writer John Carpenter. Other inspirations include the book Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad and the film Apocalypse Now by Francis Coppola, which is loosely based on the book. In the final act of the game, while riding an elevator down to the final area, Johnny states, "We're heading down the Heart of Darkness," likely in reference to the book. So let's take a look at these inspirations. Escape from New York is a wickedly cool 80s movie from the brains of John Carpenter, the man behind the original Halloween and The Thing. This one's a bit different from his other movies, so it's not exactly scary, except for maybe Romero's hair. I swear, this dude looks like Steve Buscemi got struck by lightning. But seriously, the gist of the movie's plot is that New York's Manhattan Island has a giant wall around it, converting it into like a maximum security prison, and all the prisoners are sent there. Once you go in, you don't come out. The criminals have turned the city into their own dystopian world, making their own rules. This movie has a character in a similar role to Colonel Kurt Hansen from Phantom Liberty, known as the Duke, who is number one, big boss man of the city. He is played by none other than Isaac Hayes. He was probably most notably recognized as the voice of Chef from South Park and the creator of the Shaft theme song. He's one bad mother. Shut your mouth. The criminals end up hijacking and bringing down the president's plane and kidnapping him inside the walls of the city. And there's only one man for the job to send in to rescue the president, former Special Forces soldier turned criminal, Snake Plissken. He's sent in to save the president in exchange for his freedom by the spaghetti western Dollars trilogy star Lee Van Cleef. And Snake Plissken is played by Kurt Russell. He's been quoted in interviews saying he believes Snake is the most iconic character that he has played in a movie. I'm going to read directly from a quote from an article on Polygon regarding the resemblance to Solid Snake and Metal Gear Solid to Snake Plissken. The exchange between John Carpenter and Hideo Kojima reads as follows. Solid Snake is quite openly an homage to Snake Plissken, the protagonist of John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Creator Hideo Kojima has been forthright about the film's influence on his work, and that almost landed him and Konami in court. Carpenter, speaking to The Hollywood Reporter, said that one of the rights holders of his 1981 film wanted to also go after the video game Metal Gear Solid, which is kind of a ripoff of Escape from New York too, Carpenter said. No such legal action was taken. Why? I know the director of those games, and he's a nice guy, Carpenter told THR. Or at least he's nice to me. Yeah, it's just a cool fun fact I just discovered and wanted to share. But back to the movie. This movie really captures the dystopian future with cyberpunk vibes, and with the whole start of Phantom Liberty having the president's plane being hijacked and crashing in Dogtown, you can see the clear influence here. The next inspiration on the list is a heavy one for sure. Famous filmmaker and uncle of Nicolas Cage and Jason Schwartzman. Well, real fast, dare I mention Face Off? There's a bit of this in Phantom Liberty, and I won't say any more, but you'll see what I mean when you get to a certain part in the story. And who is this famous uncle, you may be wondering? Francis Ford Coppola. Likely most well known as the co-writer and director of the epic crime film series The Godfather. His 1979 film Apocalypse Now is loosely based on the book Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad from the late 1800s. The book tells a story of how a British sailor became a river steamboat captain in Africa, telling his story about an encounter with a man named Kurtz, who manned an ivory trade post far up the river, and how he eventually turned savage, and a tribe of natives started worshipping him like a god. There's even a scene where arrows are being shot from the shore at the steamboat by the natives. Think Disney's Jungle Cruise, but just not for kids. So the movie based on this book, Apocalypse Now, is a loose retelling of this story, but in the wild, drug, and violent hazed fever dream of the Vietnam War. Martin Sheen's character has to venture deep into the jungle to find the decorated and well-respected Colonel Kurtz, sound familiar? Played by Marlon Brando, and assassinate him because Kurtz has gone mad and now has a savage tribe of natives that are worshipping him as a god far up the river into the deep jungles of Cambodia. These stories are fictional commentaries on the idea of taking a good man and putting him in a savage environment away from civilization, and how it changes even the best of men. Apocalypse Now had a dark and chaotic filming experience. I won't go into all of it because some of it is pretty unsettling and somewhat disturbing, so I'll leave you with the mystery of the macabre to discover for yourself during this spooky Halloween season. As well as inspiring the story for Far Cry 2, the Heart of Darkness story clearly has heavily inspired Phantom Liberty's premise. Phantom Liberty incorporates multiple moments with cerebral, mind-bending music that I mentioned earlier that are very reminiscent of both Escape from New York as well as Apocalypse Now's soundtracks. But wait, there's more. Aside from the music, Kurtz, Colonel Kurtz, the Duke, and Colonel Kurt Hansen being the same archetype character, there is also the similarity of the famous old quote, "The horror, the horror." This quote actually originates from the Heart of Darkness book. The scene at the end of Apocalypse Now is titled The Horror, and is disturbing to say the least. Phantom Liberty is not without its horror-inspired conclusion as well. Johnny even makes a reference to being in the Heart of Darkness at the end of Phantom Liberty. And all three of these stories conclude with a strong horror element. In Phantom Liberty, there is an Alien Isolation-inspired chase scene towards the end that is absolutely terrifying. The descent into madness really spirals in the end of the expansion, escalating into having to make really hard decisions regarding life or death, loyalty, and betrayal. I won't spoil the game's endings, but let's just say they definitely lean hard into the horror genre. I think the best way to describe how Phantom Liberty feels, it's like if you took the philosophies from Apocalypse Now and the book Heart of Darkness, and then you started it with the premise from Escape from New York, with the eerie vibe and the music at times present in both movies. Kurtz, Colonel Kurtz, the Duke, and Colonel Kurt Hansen all have a lot in common, as well as the leaders of their little kingdoms they've created. And you just put all of that in the bustling, bleak liveliness of the District B13 movies, and you've got Phantom Liberty's setting in Dogtown. Let's talk about that last one, District B13. When I think about describing Dogtown, I say it's more like District B13 and less like Night City, which is more like some sort of a hybrid city of LA, Las Vegas, and Star Wars in Nar Shaddaa. District B13 and the sequel District B13 Ultimatum are French movies, and they are some of the coolest action movies I have ever seen. They star French actor and stunt coordinator David Bell. He's the actual founder and creator of the parkour freerunning style and stunt work. This guy is the reason we even have parkour and freerunning in games. Without him, none of this would have even existed. He adapted an acrobatic military style from his father, Raymond Bell. David Bell was a Marine, and he even studied Kung Fu in India. How cool is that? This dude did all of his own stunts. He didn't use any wires, there is zero CGI in the movies, and a lot, if not most of the stunts were performed for the very first time on camera. That is insane, and it's such a cool premise for a movie. Sections of France are walled off, similar to Dogtown, left to the crime lords to run the district. And in the sequel, District B13 Ultimatum, it's seriously so much like Dogtown. These guys are super similar to the Voodoo Boys here, even with the bones and the skulls everywhere. It's so cool. The Voodoo Boys are from Haiti, and you witness a lot of them speaking Haitian Creole in the game, which does sound strikingly similar to French. Over in Pacifica and in Phantom Liberty, it shows us the bigger footprint they have in Dogtown. It's pretty on brand to give these movies a watch if you want more of the same vibe that you get from Phantom Liberty. David's character, Alito, is forced to team up with an undercover cop to save their district from being bombed by the government. And it has so many cool parkour sequences and fight scenes. There was an American remake of District B13, but it wasn't exactly a hit. That one's called Brick Mansions. But I think you'd just do yourself a favor, just go watch the original. While on the topic of David Bell, this guy also starred in an awesome looking TV show. I still have yet to figure out how to stream it or watch it, but it's called Brutal Taste of Violence. He plays an ex-special ops agent working as a bouncer, and after he accidentally kills someone, he ends up on the run, and then he falls in with a fight club. Speaking of fight club, I just gotta say real quick, Tyler Durden and Johnny Silverhand sure do have a lot in common. And as much as I love to start talking about Fight Club, I gotta save that one for another video. Since we're talking about Johnny here, something cool we got in Phantom Liberty is a good chunk more of Johnny's backstory, where we learn more of the details of his military background. There's some really good stuff there. I didn't mention these next couple observations in my last video, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to some other media that touches on a major concept, not just in Phantom Liberty, but the base game as well. In reference to the relic and Johnny Silverhand's consciousness being turned into a digital construct is similar concept that has been done in 2 other TV shows. In the show Travelers, it shows them transporting human consciousness, I think back in time even. And another very cyberpunky show I forgot to mention is Altered Carbon. This show does a similar thing, capturing the human consciousness and writing it into what they call stacks. They look like these vertebrae pieces that are inserted into the upper spine of a human body, and they refer to the bodies as sleeves. Interchangeable, and your stack is immortal so long as it doesn't get destroyed. So you can get shot up and die, in a body, and then you just pull the stack out, like somebody pulls the stack out and puts it in a different body, and then you just wake up and you look different, but you have your old consciousness. It's crazy. It's pretty cool though, the way they do it. It's really cool. So yeah, check those out. So just to recap real quick what we've covered so far. So we've discussed Phantom Liberty and its inspirations, and some of the ways the game feels and plays, but the selling point we keep getting from CDPR is that Phantom Liberty is an espionage spy thriller. And so what is an espionage spy thriller, and where are they getting their influences? Before we go into all the similarities and differences of how Phantom Liberty compares to stories and figures like James Bond or Kim Possible, there's some seriously cool stuff to look at here regarding the history of the spy genre in the entertainment industry as a whole. After the end of World War II, we found ourselves in a Cold War with Russia for over 40 years. From 1947 until 1991. For a long time there, the buzz was all about the fear surrounding Russian spies, and this kicked off an era of entertainment with a surge of spy and espionage entertainment. It seemed to start in the 1930s, at least notably with Alfred Hitchcock. He had several films, and just a couple of them that stood out to me was The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1934 and Secret Agent in 1936. I would say more culturally impactful though would be Ian Fleming's James Bond books from the 50s and 60s. The real boom for this brand of entertainment peaked in popularity in the 1960s when fears of the Cold War were at an all-time high. Other than the continuation of the James Bond movies, this genre seemed to taper off a bit, and then came back full swing in the 90s and early 2000s. And I don't know what it was about spy movies in the 90s and early 2000s, but they seemed to be everywhere for a time. I mean, maybe Tom Clancy's books and movies starting in the 90s could have played a part in this, as well as a large arsenal of industry titan titles that are continuing to this day in the gaming industry. As you can see, there's tons of good ones here. So let's just relax and enjoy the slideshow for a moment. I mean, look at how many of them there were. You got the Ipcress File with Michael Caine, 1965, aka Alfred. The Italian Job with Michael Caine. But what do we see here mostly? Bond, Bonds, Bond, lots of Bonds. It's rather staggering to say the least. The Fourth Protocol. Hey look, it's Michael Caine again. And who knows, maybe this put Pierce Brosnan on the map to be the next Bond. Man, the Austin Powers movies are hilarious, and they are essential to give a shout out to on this list.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
Undeniably, a common thread linking the genre throughout is the presence of James Bond films. But not all of the references here are solely linked to the spy genre, but I felt like heist movies deserved at least some acknowledgement here. The idea of working with a team to infiltrate some fortified target location just has a strong spy theme in my opinion. Something we get to experience in Phantom Liberty, so I feel like it's worth mentioning. The first one I wanted to look at is Ocean's 11. Not you, the actual first one from 1960. This one had mixed reviews, but what's most iconic about it, I think, is the fact that the cast of the movie included the Rat Pack, which was comprised of 3 crooner legends, along with a couple others including Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop. If nothing else, it's an old school cool caper. And then we get the 2001 Ocean's 11, which is pretty excellent in my opinion. Ocean's 12 wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good. Ocean's 13 I think was better, but then the next one was Ocean's 14, right? Nope. Why did they not just call it Ocean's 14? Since it's a continuation. I'm glad you asked. It's because there's 8 people in the crew. See, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they decided if they were to make 8 into a trilogy, then they could do the joke, why is 7 afraid of 8? Because 8, 9, 10. That's how the joke goes, right? You're not buying it? Okay, yeah, maybe I made that last part up. They did discuss making 8 into a trilogy though, which leaves them the numbers 9 and 10 to catch us up to 11. And I don't know if they're just trying to do the whole Star Wars thing at this point or what, but they're starting to lose me. I truly learned that the reasons for the numbers in the titles is for the amount of people who are on the crew. So theoretically, they will never run out of numbers, and we will never stop hearing about new Oceans movies. I wish I could say I was done talking about the crazy train that is OCU. You know, the Oceans Cinematic Universe. But they just announced that Barbie stars Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling have been confirmed to be in an Ocean's 11 prequel. So what's it gonna be called? Ocean's 2? Alright, I'm done. Honestly, I'm quite relieved that they didn't call the Cyberpunk expansion Phantom 5 or something stupid. Yikes. Moving on. Smoking Aces. That's just a cool mob shoot-'em-up involving government agents, double-crossing, and hitmen, chasing $1 million bounty. Ah man, I love that one. It kind of has similar vibes to Now You See Me with the whole magician stuff and all that. It's a really cool heist movie. Heist movies, I think, are clear cousins to the spy genre, and I'd say at least a few of them are definitely worth a nod. You might be thinking, Dr. Zombology, it's sacrilege that you are glossing over James Bond so quickly. He is the pillar of the spy genre. Rest assured, dear listener, I saved a special spot to discuss Mr. Bond here shortly. So stay tuned, and I hope you will not be disappointed. We certainly have seen a tapering off in modern day, but we still continue to get secret organization operative type movies. and shows that are good here and there. And even the show Archer's final episode just aired on October 11th this year, so that's one that's been going for quite some time now. The Bourne movies, of course, are a great example as well of spy thrillers, and Tom Cruise's Mission Impossibles have continued, of course.
Wake the up, samurai. We have a
sequel to make. Tom Cruise is known for doing his own stunts, and some of them have been absolutely insane. This dude really free climbed that rock face just for the intro of Mission Impossible 2. It is unbelievable. And speaking of stunts, that scene at the beginning of GoldenEye where James Bond bungee jumps, his stunt double actually was filmed doing that jump, which broke a world record. What a risk, but what a scene. Man, it's just so cool. So we've quickly glossed through the decades of this genre, and as you can see, there's a lot. Way more than I intend to talk about, except I do want to rip on the spy stuff marketed to kids for a bit in the early 2000s.
You guys play with me, that's in my mom's cake. Well, it is very good cake.
What in the actual crap? Inspector Gadget, okay, super cool cartoon from the 80s, sure. Fast forward to the mega trash 90s movie that somehow we all loved as kids. Why did peak childhood seem like getting all the pieces to this toy after the movie came out? It seemed like it was like the craziest thing ever. As if we would ascend somehow in our childlike existence into joining Inspector Gadget on his adventures. If we could get mommy to take us to McDonald's enough times just so we can build this thing. What did we think would happen if we got all the pieces? Inspector Gadget would somehow appear and be like, "Come on kid, you got your little me, let's go." I don't even know. Then in the sequel, they changed actors and maybe tried to ride the coattails of success of Cats and Dogs by putting Brains the Beagle on the cover, I guess. I don't know what happened there. If I remember correctly, it was like a straight to VHS and DVD film. It was not even worth putting in theater. I'm pretty sure I saw the ad for that like at a Walmart or something. Yeesh. There were a handful of decent shows and cartoons sprinkled in there, I gotta say. Some more iconic than others, of course. And you can't forget about these boys. I kid you not. I was like 10 years old when the Spy Kids era hit, and it was a sensational movement that just somehow worked, at least for kids. And what do you get when you get El Mariachi from Desperado with Machete, and then you get him with the brilliant mind who brought us Sin City from Dusk Till Dawn and Planet Terror? Yeah, who better to make a kid's spy movie than the legendary Robert Rodriguez? Side note, apparently Machete and Spy Kids are confirmed to be in the same universe, which is amazing. There's a lot I could say about this series, and of course I thought it was like the coolest thing since Go-Gurt probably at the time. It was just so cool through the eyes of a kid to imagine getting pulled into a wild world of becoming a spy and having awesome gadgets. I recently learned there are 5 Spy Kids movies, but let's just try to forget about the later sequels. Agent Cody Banks. I'm just gonna read this ridiculous poster that I found, which I'm sure is badly translated or something, but I feel like it hits the nail on the head for how this movie really felt. Save the world. Get the girl. Pass maths. This junior James Bond is the business. It could have been almost cool if it wasn't for all of it.
He's in every single one of my classes.
Yikes. What could possibly go wrong when you put Goliath from Gargoyles, Winston from John Wick, Arnold Vosloo, who played Imhotep in the Mummy movies, famously mistaken for Billy Zane, Malcolm in the Middle, and Lizzie, not you, Maguire? Maybe you think you'd get something good. Wrong, this movie was bad. But it was on brand for the spy craze for kids, all competing with the Spy Kids movies. And in hindsight, it was kind of weird they had this lady spy in it that made you feel dirty watching it as a kid. There was one shining gem in the sea of nonsense that is Spy Kids stuff back then. And that was the famous Jet Jackson. That show was absolutely amazing. I could say a lot about how good this one was, but I've probably tortured us all long enough. Now for the moment you've all been waiting for. Da-na-da. I think it's fair to say whoever you grew up with being James Bond at the time is your perception of who James Bond is to you. For my dad, his James Bond is Roger Moore. For me and my brother, it's Pierce Brosnan. One of my buddies, he grew up with Daniel Craig being his James Bond. They're different and similar in many ways, but have one thing in common. They're all 007, and that's awesome. Where did this iconic character come from? I'm glad you asked. Ian Fleming was the creator of James Bond, but what could his qualifications be to write such a fleshed out and riveting character? Fleming served in the military during World War II as part of the Naval Intelligence Division. He was from a wealthy family and attended Eton College in Windsor, England. He oversaw a real intelligence operation called Operation GoldenEye. It was to establish communication links between Gibraltar and London in case the Nazis took Spain. Then they'd be able to send word quickly. Luckily, Spain was never taken, so the operation wasn't necessary, but instead, the name GoldenEye got repurposed by Fleming when he bought a 15-acre beachside resort property in Jamaica. He built a cliffside estate, and he named the place GoldenEye. This is the location where he wrote his first James Bond novel, Casino Royale. It was published in 1953, and his final book was published in 1966, which totaled 14 James Bond books. There was a surmounting fascination for people to fantasize about a super spy to outclass the Russians during the Cold War. His time spent in the military alongside real-life intelligence agents prepared him to write compelling stories about a secret agent at the perfect time in history. The most recent Bond film, No Time to Die, even paid tribute to James Bond's Jamaican GoldenEye connection when Daniel Craig's incarnation of the character retired there, and production filmed close to the real-life GoldenEye resort, which has since been transformed into a hotel that you can actually stay at to this day. So cool. A few fun facts for you real quick. He's also the same guy who wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in 1964. It's also possible that James Bond might actually be the first ever created cinematic universe. The books, they started up again in the 80s, and they've continued on into present day. So there's been a continuation from several other writers continuing the Bond series. The original Casino Royale movie in 1967 was actually a spy parody film. And also, Amazon Prime added a James Bond collection just this last year, so you can start binging them on there, just like I've been doing lately. Never Say Never Again was only done after the conclusion of a high court case, which essentially allowed a remake of Thunderball, and that's why that's the only one available to stream on Max and not part of the James Bond collection on Prime, because it's not officially recognized as a Bond canon film, despite it starring Sean Connery. That was the one time when George Lazenby filled in for a single Bond movie called On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And that was happening while Sean Connery was doing the other one. I read recently too that there is a rumor about Christopher Nolan possibly getting to do the next batch of Bond movies, which would be super cool. It would be so neat to have a darker Bond approach, similar to his other esteemed works like the Christian Bale Batman movies, namely The Dark Knight. Movies are not the only source of Bond entertainment we've got over the years. There have also been a bunch of games as well. Some good, some not so good. 007 Legends was a flop that was released alongside the 15-year anniversary of the James Bond film series in 2012. The idea was cool, just sadly not well executed. You got to do one mission as each Bond from an iconic mission. Goldfinger as Sean Connery, On Her Majesty's Secret Service as George Lazenby, Moonraker as Roger Moore, License to Kill as Timothy Dalton, Die Another Day as Pierce Brosnan, and Skyfall as Daniel Craig. There's a DLC they added. It was ambitious for sure, with Judi Dench even voicing her lines as M, along with a number of other actors reprising their movie roles for the game. The bad gameplay and unsuccessful attempts at writing an overarching story trying to tie them all together was not well received, sadly. Project 007 is an upcoming AAA title in the works to revitalize this effort, and honestly, I'm hoping it turns out well. But if I were you, I'd be wondering when I would address the elephant in the room when it comes to 007 games. That's right, I'm talking about GoldenEye for the N64. This game was a blast to play through, the single player game, since they just modeled it after the plot and level design of the movie it's based on. The death animations were hilarious and over the top too, which was pretty good entertainment for a kid. But what stands out the most, I'd say, is how fun it was to plug in 4 controllers and play split screen multiplayer with your buddies. The goofy cheats added an element of humor we got a kick out of. You could change everyone to have like big Donkey Kong heads. This was the beginning of the couch co-op era for me. 4 controllers, all of us screen peeking and brutalizing each other in GoldenEye. My preferred multiplayer item was always the proximity mines. Nothing like surprising your screen peeking friends than with a slyly well-placed proximity mine. This absolutely pioneered the way for LAN parties for Halo, but I don't want to drive this train too far off the rails there. Unlike Pierce Brosnan, the train did not have a stunt double. What's not to love about GoldenEye? You get Boromir, aka Ned Stark, as Agent 006, an intro in the snow, fighting the USSR, Oh, such a cool and unforgettable way to start a Bond movie. And that death-defying bungee jump at the dam, seriously, it's just so good. And GoldenEye wasn't the only good 007 games we got though. We also had Agent Under Fire, From Russia with Love, Nightfire, The World Is Not Enough, and Everything or Nothing. All really great 007 games. But GoldenEye wasn't the only gem that Rare Studios was known for. And after their success with GoldenEye, they moved on to create another compelling secret agent game that built off a lot of the successful mechanics of its predecessor. That's right, I'm talking about Perfect Dark. One of the story points in Perfect Dark actually involves saving the president after a plane crash. I wonder if that inspired Phantom Liberty in any way, or if it's just a coincidence. Either way, we're talking about how good this one was. The first-person shooter gameplay was unmatched at the time. The unique reload animations were mind-blowingly cool. The story was compelling and interesting, and the voice acting is actually kind of entertaining at times.
What the? Who the? Medic! Help! You shot me! I'm hit! I'm taking fire!
Especially the guys you fight. Oh man, it's just too good. There's also a Game Boy Color game with the same title, just with a different plot, as well as Perfect Dark Zero for the 360, which was pretty well received, and it added the change of having Joanna, the main character, be more of a bounty hunter, which is still cool. And then in 2010, Perfect Dark for the 360 came out, which was a remaster of the original N64 version, and definitely made some major improvements, I'd say. There is a reboot in development currently for Perfect Dark as well, which I really hope draws a new generation of gamers into a beloved classic title. There are a few other upcoming projects worth keeping an eye on as well as the Perfect Dark reboot. Metal Gear Solid Remaster Collection comes out on October 24th, Ghost Runner 2 releases October 26th, and RoboCop Rogue City comes out on November 2nd. There are actually quite a few other game titles worth looking at quickly that fit the bill for being acknowledged in the spy genre as well. And I'm not going to go through all of these because as you can see there's quite a few, but feel free to pause the video and check into them if you're curious. It's by no means going to be a complete list, but just a variety of ones that immediately stood out to me. One thing is for certain, there may be mild and major differences as well as common ground between stealthy assassins, secret agents, spies, and espionage. We have so much good stuff to be entertained by in this unique and intriguing genre. And speaking of assassins, I'm hearing Assassin's Creed Mirage is being quite well received. Assassin's Creeds are definitely titans in the stealth assassin game genre for sure. I hope to check out the new one at some point as a fan of the series. After looking at the direct influences, the spy genre as a whole, praising some of the high points as well as poking fun at some of the blunders, I think all in all, it's a worthy subgenre that could always use more content. I think that the way CD Projekt Red crafted Phantom Liberty, although it does not have the charm of a cheesy spy flick, absolutely captures the cool, suave, and sleek espionage spy thriller vibe they were going for. The expansion definitely leans harder into its dark overtones and cerebral thriller elements throughout. I found it unforgettable and best in its class. It was an A+ for me. I really don't want to spoil anything major, so I won't say a whole lot more about it, but just looking at its tone, theme, influences, and quality, it's an absolute banger, and some of the best Cyberpunk 2077 has to offer. They honestly didn't just create an expansion, they wove it perfectly into the base game, and it feels like it was always supposed to be there. The amount of work they put into this shows just how much more than an isolated expansion it is, and they made it cohesive with the rest of the game, even weaving in voice lines all the way up to the ending of the game, making Phantom Liberty references and name-dropping key characters. The level of care and detail they put effort into truly amazed me. Briefly, I want to talk about two very iconic new characters introduced in Phantom Liberty, Songbird and Solomon Reed. Idris Elba absolutely nails his role as the cool and collected grizzled agent. And equally impressive was Minji Chang's voice for Song So-mi, aka Songbird. She is just straight up cool. Like cool. The best way I think I can describe her is she's kinda has a vibe similar to a cross between Chloe Bennett's Daisy Johnson from Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as the charming hacker girl meets Lucy Liu's character Pearl from Mel Gibson's Payback. Just not as neurotic and aggressive as Pearl, but with the same cool factor and style for sure. Switching gears here a little bit, I wanted to wrap this video up by sharing something a bit more personal regarding my time spent in Night City. So, on a more personal note, earlier this year I got laid off from a career that I loved, and I got burned by the corporation I poured nearly a decade of my life into. So naturally choosing the corpo start to the game really resonated with me. and now I'm doing a variety of freelance style jobs, as well as having been able to start pursuing this lifelong passion. I've gotten a lot of encouragement from friends and family to pursue more creative endeavors, and this gave me the push to start producing content like this. Content that I hope provides some insight and entertainment, as you can join me in reveling in the journey of creative analysis and nerding out about all these great works of art. Playing Cyberpunk 2077 was not merely an escape for me during that rough transition in life. It inspired me to chase my dreams and told a story of how to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go out there and make something of yourself, just like V. I found comfort in playing through Cyberpunk 2077, seeing the parallels in my own life of a personal journey of overcoming rejection, forgiveness, and failure while striving to pursue new accomplishments, focusing on self-reflection and growth. And this game played a part in that, I would say. I set a goal for myself back in May of this year to get the Platinum Trophy and 100% the game. And after over 100 hours later, I finally got the trophy just the other day, and I'm so glad I did. I gotta be honest though, some days it was a matter of discipline during moments of feeling mild burnout, and I set the game down for a month or so, but kept coming back to fulfill a promise I made to myself. I can honestly say I will miss Night City and the memories I have there, and happily will revisit the game at any time, maybe when I get some spare time, but I take the good times and appreciate what I learned from that experience, and I look to the future for the next adventure. Look out for my next video swinging in soon. We will be taking a look at Spider-Man. And just like my Cyberpunk coverage, it will be another 2-part video journey, one I hope you will join me on. Until next time, thanks for watching.